Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vicki Jadowski, editor of the Greater Wilmington Business Journal, and welcome to Wilmington Biz Talk, our weekly live interview program that we do with area newsmakers and health officials in the Cape Fear region. As many of you know or may have seen, we've also, as we relaunched BizTalk this year, have also put together a podcast where you can re-listen to the episodes or catch up on previous interviews as well. So if you want to hear last week's interview about how the vaccine rollout is going in southeastern North Carolina, you can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, or click on the article that we'll post in our afternoon email with today's talk. So today we have the billion-dollar question. Today we are going to be talking about what happens next with the new community endowment that comes from the proceeds of selling the county-owned New Hanover Regional Medical Center to Novant Health. And to fill us in a little bit about what's been happening so far and the next steps that need to be done to put together such a large foundation endowment is Spence Broadhurst, who is chair of the New Hanover Community Endowment Board, and Hannah Gage, who is vice chair of that board. Both served on the Partnership Advisory Group, which was the citizen panel that came together and really did alliance work and hundreds of hours of meetings wading through the future of the hospital, taking in proposals and ultimately negotiations with Novant. So Spence and Hannah, thanks for joining us today.
Sure, glad to be here. Appreciate you having us.
Yeah, it seems like a year of meetings was not enough for you guys who both have day jobs. You wanted to keep on with this. But I keep saying billion-dollar question, and it's almost one of those words where you say over and over again, it starts to lose meaning. And this figure, the 1.2 billion, has been talked about since the Novant letter of intent had come out. But basically it means from the sale, because it's a county-owned hospital and part of the deal that was negotiated, that money now goes to New Hanover County by way of this endowment. So you all are now in charge of this board that's putting that together and all the systems in place. So I guess we'll just start off and tell us, what have you been doing so far on it?
Well, we've been doing a lot. You know, the initial board came together at the end of October, and then the full board of 11 a month or so after that. We've been meeting, Vicki, every week because, as you know, we're starting with a blank piece of paper. You know, we have no foundation, we have no committees, we have no policies, we have no mission, vision, values statement. You know, we're starting from scratch. And so all 11 members have been really gracious with their time and dedicated a lot of time and effort into starting those things. Working on an investment policy, starting to talk about our mission and vision statement. We divided it. We've worked into committees now and governance, and which really is going to create the foundation for our endowment, hopefully for many years to come. The investment committee obviously has some significant responsibilities, and then our personnel committee obviously is working hard towards those goals. So we've been busy.
You know, Vicki, one of the things that we've tried to do is wrap our heads around the whole thing and come up with a map. And that's a critical path that changes about every week, but it gives us a roadmap so that we know exactly where we are. And each committee is working along a path. Some of it's in parallel, and some of it, is not. But I think that we have an idea of where we're going. Every day it changes. I think that I liken it to building a house. And I think that there will be a large swath of time where you will see pretty much nothing. It's not going to be terribly exciting if you're just living in this county and waiting for the money to roll out. But if you do it right, we're slowly putting together the infrastructure of a business. And that doesn't happen overnight.
Vicki, I'll say one more thing. Hannah's exactly right. It's like building a house that and for 11 people that have probably never built a house like this, or certainly one not this big. So, we're learning all the time, and Hannah will touch on that, I know, some later, but we're learning all the time because we've got a lot to learn ourselves.
And you mentioned 11-member board, and that's actually going to expand in the coming, month. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well, why that's happening. But I just want to remind viewers, if you're watching us live on Facebook, you can go ahead and put your questions on the stream, and I'll keep an eye out for it and pass it along to Spence and Hannah. So real quick, let's like take even another step back and talk about the nature of this endowment, which already is what came from an unusual situation. Still having a county-owned hospital, as we talked about in the past year, was a rarity in the U.S. But where does this level of endowment, how does it compare with, other private or community endowments in the state, or even what you've seen in other parts of the country? What does this scope look like?
I'll take it.
Yep.
You
Absolutely.
know, I don't think we know the exact answer there because we don't really live in the world of philanthropy. But but individuals that are in that world have shared with us how significant it is. And I think the endowment world looks at the footprint that you have and the amount of money that goes into that footprint. And so it's almost per capita. And the Duke Endowment president, Rhett Mavry, told me that we would become overnight when this closed, and now it's closed, one of the top 2 or 3 in the South. And because the Duke Endowment, which is $3.8 billion, covers 2 states, North and South Carolina. And I think what is unique about us is that the geographic size is smaller for the amount of money. I think there's an endowment in Atlanta, the Robert Woodruff Foundation, which came from the Koch money. I think that's the largest, but I think we're up there, none of which matters to us. Essentially, I think what matters to us is that we do good work in service of the community.
And we should also point out, so we had mentioned this in our coverage before, but when we're talking about the size of this endowment and is it still estimated at 1.25 billion? Has that changed at all from the closing period?
$1,243,171,045.48.
Okay,
And as you know, from the sale of the hospital, there's certain monies that are escrowed after the sale closing for loose ends. There's two buckets of money. One is relatively short term, one's very long term, that after those final reconciliations are done, there could be some more, but that's exactly how much it is. That's exactly how much was wired to us.
So we should point out that money, it's not once you have the endowment up and running, that will not be that amount immediately infused into the community, right? The idea is to invest it and have it off the proceeds, off the investments. I believe there was actually even a percentage that was put into the deal when you guys passed it. But the idea being that every year that this money lasts on, and that the grants or however you allocate the funds are coming off of the investment earnings, correct?
Right, Vicki. The intention is for the principal, the 1,400,000,000 or 1,500,000,000, 1,243,000,000 or 1,250,000,000, whatever it rounds out to be there to be a perpetual fund. That's our intention, and we would invest the proceeds, dividends, interest off of that into the community each year. One thing I will caution all of us is that it's going to be a period of time before we're in a position to start accepting and making grants, because obviously we just received the money. We have it invested incredibly securely and at a very low return right now until we can get our investment policy in place and those kind of things. So it's going to take us a couple of years to really get this money invested. You don't just drop $1 billion in the stock market at the top of the market and all of a sudden wake up and went down 10% and you lose $100 million. You just don't do that. So it's going to take us a few years for the investment committee to get the money invested. And then as we go along, when it's appropriate, we'll certainly start making grants. But you're exactly right. The intention is for this to be endowed, and we will invest the proceeds into the community.
So Spence, just to make sure I understand you correctly, so you don't foresee any of the grants coming out next year, or obviously not this year, but not even next year either?
It's hard to say. I wouldn't say that. I would just say that we really don't know. We really don't know right now. we're learning every day what we don't know. And so we just don't want to commit to a time frame that we don't really can't get our arms around right now. So I would say that you're right. It would be highly unlikely that we'd be in a position to make grants this year. Next year, we'll know more some months from now as we get the money invested and as we get our infrastructure in place. And we haven't hired an executive director, CEO person. We haven't hired anybody, and so we've got a lot of work to do before we can really start talking about the grant making.
Vicki, I think that, and we're learning, just like Spence said, one of the things that we're trying to do is educate ourselves. And we started bringing in people, experts, to help us early on. And then it got so busy towards the close that we pulled back. But one of the things that we'll be talking about tonight is an ongoing education plan for board members so that we are not only informed, but we're informed about the best practices of great endowments. And I think that we're going to do deep dives into learning about our community, everything we need to know so that we can thoughtfully develop our objectives, which will shape the grants. And so this year, though we may not be giving away money when people had hoped, we will be doing good work so that we know exactly how to spend it carefully so that it makes a difference. We are going to be learning about the best practices of world-class endowments, how they're structured, their conflicts of interest policies, their investment policies. And I think the third category that we're going to be learning about is where endowments make mistakes. There are endowments you read about that have some disasters along the way. So I would refer to it as kind of endowments 101. We're going to be going to school while we're beginning to hire people and find an office and do all those other things so that we can make good decisions. And I hope that by the time we hire a director, we'll have a clear sense of where we want to invest, and they will hire the people that will oversee the grants. And I hope that in the next year, not this year, but the next year, we will do something. But I think we're all scared to say because we don't want to create false expectations in the community.
Vicki, and to that point, it's not lost on any of us on this board how fortunate and blessed we are as a community to have this endowment. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And Hannah used the term great several times in its own purpose, because we want this to be a great foundation with endowment built on the right foundations that'll be solid for years and years and years to come. And so, patience is important for all of us as we get that done moving forward.
We got really good advice from the Dogwood Health Trust chair and vice chair. They visited in one of our sessions, one of our Thursday night sessions, and the Dogwood was set up a little bit differently because it was a hospital conversion from Mission Hospital, but part of the infrastructure from Mission Hospital did not stay with HCA, the new company that had bought the hospital. So it moved over, and the new endowment overnight had employees and office space and a director, and they jumped in very quickly and began to do what they thought were the right things to give away money. And their advice was over and over again, go slow before you can go fast. Because after a year, they realized that they had made some mistakes and they had to hit the pause button. They terminated the individual that they'd hired to manage it. They pulled back on their grant making and they hit the pause button. They had not, and they say they had not spent enough time really learning about how to do it. They hadn't done the mission, vision, and values part. That sounds perfunctory, but it really isn't. It's how the board decides what they want to do and what success will look like. And until you do that, you can't really responsibly decide where you put money. And and so Spence is absolutely right. It's going to take a lot of patience on our part and on the part of the community as they wait.
And so we should mention that Dogwood Trust that Hannah's talking about came out of the purchase of the mission hospitals around Asheville to HCA. One thing about that trust is it covers an 18-county region. And so that kind of leads me into a question that Brunswick County Commissioner Frank Williams has posted on our feed while we're talking here. So his question is, NHRMC has supported and thus been supported by a region that extends well beyond the boundaries of New Hanover County. Will this foundation support worthy causes throughout the entire region that has been served by NHRMC, or funds only be used within New Hanover County? If the latter, why?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. You know, the assets were owned by New Hanover County and sold by New Hanover County, and the proceeds went to New Hanover County. And so in the asset purchase agreement, the county commissioners included that the endowment would be set up for the benefit of New Hanover County, but it does give some flexibility in that you know, we are a region, and that which enables, enhances, and helps New Hanover County has the opportunity to do the same in the surrounding areas. So I believe, Hannah, if I don't let me speak incorrectly, but I believe I speak for the entire board, is that, you know, our responsibility is to invest this money in New Hanover County. Our want and our desire is to find ways that will also benefit the entire region. And there will be opportunities to do that.
I think there will, and I think the thinking on the board will evolve over time. But there have been a lot of analogies with the dogwood, and I think that the one thing that is missing when everyone talks about it, the dogwood was a community. I mean, the Mission Hospital was a community hospital, and very different from a county hospital. Mission had hospitals that were constructed in the region, throughout the region, and clinics. They had bricks and mortar that were put there. Those counties paid for those hospitals also. They had joint projects over 50 years. And so there had been subsidies and ongoing financial support from, I think it's an 18-county region, towards Mission Hospital. And so when it sold, you know, all the individual counties that had put fortunes into it, not just, and they had also sent, you know, patients had come from the surrounding areas, but there were significant capital investments that the surrounding region had made in these hospitals, which bumped up the price beyond just the patients, the traffic of the patients from the region. And so it's kind of an apples and orange comparison, none of which is to say that we do not recognize the role that the region has played. And my personal thought is that over time, there will be, I won't even say relaxing, but I think that it will be hard as this region grows for these things to merge together. And I think right from the beginning, if we give financial support to the expansion of the programs that UNC is bringing in, and I don't know that that will happen, but I assume at some point that some of the things that UNC Chapel Hill wants to do in its expansion in the region will be asked to, to participate. One of that is the expansion of AHEC, and that's the preparation of the doctors and the nurses and the physical therapists that go out into the counties that work in their nursing homes and clinics. I think that if we contributed in any way to expand the number of nurses that are coming out of Cape Fear Community College and coming out of UNCW, we will be supplying nurses to this region, which are badly needed. Right now, we spend millions a year recruiting nurses in this county from out of state, and the region suffers because they don't always have those experts. They don't always have physical therapists in their senior centers. And I think that there will be a lot of opportunity for us to invest and expand those programs that will be pushing these experts into the region. So I look at, I hear exactly what Franklin Williams is saying, and I think he makes a good point, and none of that's lost on us. But I think we're playing right now with the rules that have been given us. And I don't know if that answers, I don't know that that's going to resolve the question. I think it will be examined on an ongoing basis.
Another one of the rules that was given to you guys, as you say, Hannah, was the areas where the money should be invested in. And they're broad areas, but they are 4 areas: education, health and social equity, community development, and community safety. And that covers a whole lot of ground from, I think some of the examples, obviously these are not decided, but some of the examples that had been cited before were anything from tuition for education majors, or one-to-one technology for students in New Hanover County, law enforcement training, workforce housing trust fund. Again, I throw these examples out knowing that none of that, you're not committing any money to that, but just so people can understand and wrap their heads around what are the concrete types of things that this money could go towards. So my question is, how do you go about and understanding, knowing you don't have the grant framework in place or process in place, but just philosophically, how do you go about prioritizing what the greatest needs are? Should it be subjective as people come in for requests? Should there be a more quantitative way to go about it? How do you put the money to the greatest impact of use?
Well, I'll take a stab, then turn over to Hannah because she has some really good insight into this. I think the first thing is we need to take a deep dive into understanding where the needs are instead of thinking we know what the needs are. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us to assess the community needs. And it starts with listening to the community and having open sessions and hearing what's going on. We think we know what's going on, but we probably don't. And so we need to be out in the community having public sessions, and hopefully we'd love to have them live, but we'll have them any way we can have them so that we can get the community input to start with, and then engage in really professional understanding of what the needs are. Because those 4 areas, Vicki, are very broad. They're going to cover just about every ill that's out there that we can address. And then I think after we engage the community and we really get an understanding of what needs to be done, then I think we've got a foundation for starting to accept grants. And I speak for myself, but I think I speak for the entire board, where because this is such a significant endowment, we want to look for ways to solve issues and not treat them. We have so many great nonprofits that are doing such great work in our community. Now over time, after the investments have matured some, we will have the revenue to really try to peel the onion back and get underneath the problems instead of just treating what's in front of us, and try to solve the social ills or the economic ills or the educational ills that are creating the challenges that we have. And so that seems to me the process that we'll be going along over the next period of time.
Yeah, Spence is right. I think that one of the things that I hope we'll be doing, and some of this starts next week, is in bringing in local experts that will bring the data and show us, and that will be in early childhood, early college, public health needs, homelessness, affordable housing, taking dives into each one of those and looking at data, not just what we think. And so that this will be done on an ongoing basis. So in each of the 4 big buckets, we have shared knowledge. And that distinction, I think, a consultant that we're working with, pointed that out. All of us feel like we're experts in some areas, and maybe we've spent our life, devoted to maybe land trust, land conservation, but we're not experts. And one of the things a board has to do is develop deep shared knowledge. So you do understand, not just what the situation is with affordable housing in your community, but you all can kind of agree on what would have to be done to improve it. So I think it's just, a lot of this is hearing from the public and hearing from the experts so that we can shape our own ideas about this. I don't think that, and I think Spence is absolutely right. we want to solve problems. And the way you do that is not to do it emotionally and not to do it individually. It really is to look long and hard at data and what the real truth is and what things can change that. And one example that I think, I learned just in my experience with public education is, for many, many years, we talked about all the things that had to be done throughout, first grade on up. And in some ways, we never did pay a lot of attention to early childhood. And within the last few years, we've recognized that no matter what you do, no matter how great the teacher is, how great the technology is, how great the principal leadership program is, if you don't have almost universal pre-K, a child, especially a child from an underserved neighborhood or underserved environment, can't catch up, almost never. And so those are kind of big things that early college is another one. I think that's an extraordinary thing that provides, associate's degrees free to everybody that wants it, but most people don't know about it, and most communities don't have enough slots. You've got cases like that in public health. You've got cases like that in open space and lack of safety in poor neighborhoods. And so I think it's all of us kind of understanding that and learning about it, and then being able to make better decisions so that as we approach the grants, we know how to shape them. We know what things will make sense. But it is a process.
Real quick, you mentioned hearing from experts next week. Do you have any time frame for when you might start doing public listening sessions?
Well, we certainly, the first thing we're doing, and I'm sure you'll touch on in a minute, is engaging the public in our 2 new board members, but we will continue to engage the public as we expand out our committees and include more people in our process. And then we will certainly have town hall type sessions as we look towards the grant process. That's where that's where the rubber meets the road, right? And that's a little farther down the road this year. It'll certainly be this year, but that's a little farther down the road, a few months, I'm guessing. We really haven't gotten to a firm timetable, but as we start moving towards things that Hannah walked through, we will start engaging the community, I'd say in the coming months, but it's just kind of hard to say exactly when.
Okay, Spencer, you mentioned those 2 additional board seats. Can you explain about why that's happening and how you're going about that?
The first thing I'll say is what a blessing. I think it's just a great opportunity for this board and this community to add 2 additional partners to the board. So we're excited about that opportunity. I'll take a step back though, and I will say that I tip my hat to the New Hanover County commissioners, especially the county manager and staff and the trustees from the hospital in their thoughtful process and structure in setting up this endowment. I think they did a tremendous job. And I think the work with the Attorney General through the approval process bore that out. I really did. And we enjoyed the interaction with the Attorney General's office with ideas and suggestions, most of which we had already engaged ourselves in: the town hall meetings, the listening sessions, the advisory committee group that we'd already talked about all of those things. And he had the suggestion of adding 2 dedicated type board seats, and we were excited about that opportunity. And so he carved out 3 areas of expertise from which these potential board members would need to come from, and it's public health, serving underserved communities, and Hannah, give me the third one. It just slipped my mind.
Health, public health, underserved communities, racial justice,
racial, social, and justice. Thank you. And so we have reached out through the media and through the website we've set up, and we have an application process now that's open to any citizen in New Hanover County to apply. We have a good series of questions that outlines a person's background and interest, and we encourage anybody with interest in those 2 board seats to apply. We have, the public health side is critical, because, we are the money is flowing from the hospital, but there's more than that. There are the other areas we've already talked about that we're looking for expertise in. So we just encourage anybody with interest to reach out to us.
It's nhcendowment.org.
Thank you.
Please
We'll
apply.
we'll be sure to put the link in the afternoon story for our newsletter. But on the staff side, we have a viewer who wants to know, besides the executive director that you mentioned that you need to hire, is there any other staff that needs to be hired? They give examples of chief investment officer, community relations, any other staff positions an endowment would have?
I'll tell you exactly. Yeah, I'll tell you exactly. The first one we need to hire is an administrative assistant, so that Spence isn't taking notes at the meetings anymore. Because he I consider myself a pretty good banker. I'm not a very, very good administrative person, and that. So yeah, we'll start with some administrative help just to kind of get us from point A to point B and keeping up with the minutes and helping Hannah with all that. But yeah, all of the above. I think our first and very thoughtful step will be an executive director, CEO type position. I think that's, you start at the top and build your infrastructure from there. But as Hannah mentioned, with some of the challenges other endowments have had or foundations have had, we have taken their advice and we are working very methodically towards that. So before we even engage that process, we're engaging ourselves in the mission, vision, and values process. What are we? What do we want to look like? What do we believe in, to set that foundation before we start reaching out to the community and really nationwide to find the right leader of this group. And then we will build it out from there. There are different options in how you handle your investments internally or externally. That's our investment committee is working through now. And then obviously you have to have a CFO with a organization this size. And then we will build out from there, again, it's $1 billion company, so to speak. And so we will build out all those positions. And then as we start issuing grants, then we have people that will be engaged with the grantees in helping them achieve the goals that they initially set out to. So we will have a number of people in the grant making and the grant coordination process as that time comes.
Vicki, I've got to sign off. I hate to do this, but I want to thank you. I've got another Zoom I'm supposed to be in right now. So thank you for the opportunity.
I know we were about to wrap up too, and Hannah, I know you rearranged your schedule some so you could join us. So I want to thank you both for your time and your expertise. I know there's a lot of decisions to be made. And of course, the Business Journal will be following along and covering those as they're done. So thank you for a little bit of insight of what it looks like on the ground floor. I will talk to you, I'm sure, later and check in. And for all of our viewers, thank you for watching and for the questions. We'll have the links that Spence and Hannah mentioned for the application in our afternoon story, and also a replay of this on our podcast channels. Thanks very much. Have a great afternoon.